Hey everybody, Bianca Jade here. And today I have a really special conversation that I want you guys to be a part of. I have Krista Aliga, who is a certified financial planner and senior advisor at Personal Capital, to talk about love and money, which is so important, especially right now, just as we had Valentine's Day a few days ago, and we're actually in Creative Romance Month in February. But more than that, couples need advice on taking care of their finances and allowing it to be a healthy conversation to have. So, welcome, Krista. I cannot wait to get into this.
Thank you so much, Bianca. I'm excited to be here.
Now, if you can kind of take us through this whole love and money report that just came out and some of these very interesting stats that I actually wasn't so surprised to hear about in relation to couples.
Personal Capital, that's the company I work for. They recently fielded a survey with Morning Consult. And it was really revealing. We do this every year, right around Valentine's Day, because a lot of times, like what you mentioned, money and finances, or money and love can both be very vulnerable topics. But what we found was that 57% of our respondents had indicated that financial stress was increased in their relationship due to the pandemic. A couple other things I thought was really interesting with it was that 66% of those respondents that did say there was an increase in financial stress were in Gen Z or millennial generations. And then one statistic that stuck out to me was that 40% of our respondents noted that they avoid money conversations altogether. And so we definitely want to tackle some tips and tricks of how to approach these conversations.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting that 39% of couples don't really want to talk about money with their partner versus I sort of always do want to talk about that with my partner, but I know it's a difficult topic to broach. And I wonder why. Do you know why this is such a difficult conversation to have?
I think money is a very sensitive topic for a lot of individuals, and it could be multiple factors that are leading to that. Maybe it's how their family approached money. There are some families that won't talk about money at all. Others might be more open to it, or maybe it's financial hurdles that they've overcome. But I think once you start talking about money, it can make an individual feel very vulnerable, and so that could certainly be some contributing factors if they have a bias in their history just regarding money conversations.
Totally, especially if the two individuals in the relationship, like if one makes more money than the other, and it's not really like an equal income being brought into the house, that's kind of that could be the setup for a lot of emotions, I think. Okay. When is really the best time to start having this conversation? Is it before moving in together? Is it once you guys are settled? What's your advice on this?
It's such a great question. I don't think there's that perfect moment when, suddenly on the sixth date, you should be talking about finances. Every single relationship is going to evolve gradually over time. So it really depends on how the relationship is evolving and what each partner's comfort level is. My advice would be, if you see that the relationship is evolving into a long-term committed relationship, maybe it's time to start subtly approaching money conversations. Now, I'm not saying that you need to dive into every single bill or expense that you have coming up with your partner, but maybe approach it just as a goal setting conversation. If there's a vacation that you want to save up for, or maybe a money goal that you've been working on, like paying off a small debt, I think just opening up in subtle ways can really help with that stigma and the vulnerability of it. But when couples do start to approach money conversations, I think that the key is transparency, honesty, and just creating a non-judgmental space.
Totally. Otherwise, a fight is going to break out, or some kind of raising of voices and just, if it's not a fight, it's sort of just that feeling of okay, well, this wasn't really, a feel good conversation. And I think whatever you can do to make it, a conversation that feels like, you're in a safe place. This is for, to better our lives together. What are the main types of finances that couples should be talking about? You mentioned vacations, but if you can kind of give us the top 4 or 5.
Yeah, absolutely. So it really depends what stage they are in the relationship. If you're just moving in together, maybe cash flow is a great topic to have a conversation surrounding. You want to make sure that you're certainly on the same page as far as any rent, utilities, streaming services that you might want. So I think initial stages of the conversation, you can focus more on cash flow, budgeting, especially when you start living together. But I think always keeping it more goal setted also, it does create more of a lighthearted conversation when you start aligning goals with your partner, like vacations, like I had mentioned. But I think those are great starters for the conversations. And as you gradually, if marriage is where the relationship heads, then you can really dive into a little bit more weeds for long-term focus with your money.
And as far as expenses go, should it be 50-50? If that's really going to be, representative of, a partnership, or should it go by income? Should the person making the most money be paying for, 60-70% of, of bills, of expenses? Or does, the fact that perhaps, let's say this is a family, someone who's providing the majority of the child care, or taking care of the home and doing other things that maybe aren't representative of, like, going out there and bringing home money, but are really managing home life. Does that count for something? With everything sort of evolving in the past 20 years, I feel like this is an important question to ask, because it's no more like the man goes out and makes the money and the wifey stays at home and cleans the house. Things are so different, but I wonder, like, how we put a value on the different roles.
I really don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. I think the two main buckets that you could look at with your partner is a 50-50 split with expenses, or you could look at income and splitting them proportionate to what income it looks like for each partner. Again, there's not going to be a right or wrong answer. I think the most important thing is that you're on the same page with your partner. If someone's making 40,000 and the other individual is making 200,000, there might be just some lifestyle needs that the individual with a higher income is going to want to accommodate for. So maybe they're going to pitch in a little bit more. So again, I'm going to always take it back to transparency and honesty, because the last thing any couple wants is to enter, a financial commitment and feeling like they're spread too thin, because that's where all of the financial stressors are going to come into play. So transparency and honesty, and just being realistic with what you can and can't cover, and having that conversation with your partner, that's going to be key. And that can really determine if the 50-50 split will make sense for you, or if looking at income and splitting it proportionately will make more sense.
So when we're talking about serious relationships, they're the type of couples that are cohabitating. They're not even talking about marriage yet. And then they're, the other kind of couples that are like engaged, or, planning a wedding, maybe just fresh off their wedding. What are the differences, like, in terms of tips that you would provide for having a peaceful relationship with money? I mean, there's still a level of, like, when you're cohabitating where things are like separate, you're not doing like the joint bank account yet, or, siphoning off money from your income to save for this wedding. It's kind of like a different mindset entirely.
Most relationships, I would say, over time, their goals do align. They do start combining finances. That usually happens after marriage. Where they're going to start looking at things more jointly. If you're cohabitating and you're still keeping things separate, and some married individuals do still keep things separate also, that's perfectly fine as well. I think just as long as you're having those conversations with your partner, as far as, if there is a big expense coming up that maybe you should loop them in about, that you're going to be covering, I think just keeping it open and honest is always the best. In either situation, if you're having separate finances. or if you're joining them in marriage. The cohabitating could be a little bit different also, just because again, it's going to come down to what your comfort level is, what you want to reveal to your partner, because you do still have that more individual financial relationship. But if the relationship does evolve into something that's leaning towards marriage, I think that's where a lot of couples see that their values and their money priorities start to align a little bit more.
In this direction of talking about marriage, let's talk about, prenup. Why is this so important for women specifically? I recently watched The Tinder Swindler and it's really, a hot show on Netflix right now. And I mean, overall, it just kind of like made me nervous for women as far as their finances and like who to trust and all of that. And that wasn't even a marriage. That was like, a dating scenario. But, can we never just wholeheartedly trust our partners in terms of money, or in thinking a relationship should last? Like, tell me the significance of a prenup in this day and age.
Sure. Well, I have not seen the Tinder Swindler, so
gotta see it. It's addicting. It's very entertaining.
So I don't know exactly how that would approach it, but I think prenups, they get a bad rep, and there's a lot of stigma with them. I think when someone hears the word prenup, they're automatically thinking the marriage isn't going to last, and that's not always going to be the case. I mean, of course, you would have some situations that might be, but when you look at prenups, really what they're providing is peace of mind that you're going to be protected in any event. And so with the prenup, a lot of people will set it up because they have an asset that they want to protect. So that might be children from a previous relationship that they want to make sure that they're all set if something were to happen to the marriage. It could be that they have a small business that they want to see grow. So it's not just exclusive to specific genders or specific income earners. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be something that you want to work with your attorney regarding, just to make sure that it actually makes sense in your situation. But it can really be created for anyone that has something that they want to protect and have more control over. In some ways, they can build more trust in a relationship, because you're having all those conversations up front. So again, it's providing that security and that peace of mind for one individual or both of them.
So if you're not wealthy, is it important to still get a prenup? Or is this kind of like a moot issue if you don't have a lot of money that you need to protect, or a big business?
Mm-hmm. It could be. I wouldn't say that prenups are exclusive to wealthy individuals. I think it's anyone that might have something that they want to protect. So it could be, again, individuals that have maybe children from a previous relationship, or small businesses, or maybe they foresee generational wealth coming into the picture. So it really depends on the situation and what they're looking for specifically. But I would say at the end of the day, it's anyone that's looking for a little bit more control and peace of mind.
So just to kind of like summarize what you said, because I think this is a really, important part of this whole love and money picture, is that a prenup is planning. It's not just about money.
I would say it's always important to work with a licensed professional, such as an attorney, because really at the end of the day, a prenup is going to be a contractual agreement. And so you can make them as simple or complex as you want. So that would be where an attorney would be able to really walk you through how you'd want to draft it and how it would meet your needs overall. So I think that would be more of a high level response to it. Is it might make sense for some individuals. It might not make sense for some individuals, but it's important just to seek out and get that guidance to see if it makes sense in your situation.
Kind of taking from my personal life, my therapist in a session that I had with her before I moved in with my partner had recommended what is called a domestic partnership agreement. And it was the first time I'd ever heard of anything like that. So I was like, "Ooh, what is this?" And she's like, you can Google it and download one from the internet. And essentially what these are they're like domestic partnership agreements that focus on finances, properties, belongings, etc. Are you a fan of these?
I'll be quite honest. I actually don't come across these a whole lot, or very rarely. The domestic partnership agreement. I don't know if I would say to go ahead and download something off the internet. I know there's a lot of free resources on the internet, but again, at the end of the day, it's going to be a contractual agreement that you're making with another individual, and so it's always good to get a set of eyes on those that can actually walk you through the legality terms and make sure that it's actually going to meet your needs and what you're looking for. It might make sense, again, just like a prenup. It might not make sense for everyone. It just really depends on your situation and what your ultimate goals and objectives are, if something were to happen with the relationship. For the domestic partnership agreements, they're a little more out of my realm. But I would imagine that, if you're not planning on getting married, but you're going to be in a long-term committed relationship, that might make sense, just to keep things a little more separate, or at least know how to handle if something were to happen to the relationship. But it would be something that you certainly want to walk through with a licensed attorney and just make sure that it makes sense for you.
Are there other resources that you recommend for couples looking to get financially organized and in sync?
Yeah, absolutely. So Personal Capital is an excellent resource. I know I mentioned it earlier, but at the end of the day, when you're having money conversations with your partner, the key is really transparency and being honest, and using a tool like Personal Capital. It's an aggregation tool where you can put everything in one place. You or your partner can each set up separate dashboards, but it gives you that transparency into your own financial life. So if you've never actually looked at everything in one place, it gives you that first building block and foundation of where you're currently at, and helps you really align with what goals and objectives you might have in mind, or how it can help you achieve those as well. So I would certainly recommend an aggregation tool for that initial transparency, and Personal Capital has a great one.
I love it. I think getting organized is such a huge part of just cohabitating and, getting married and aligning on everything, in life. I find that, even just moving in with my partner has been like a total organization process. So anything that helps us not get at each other's throats is a good thing. Cause I think it is the key to a healthy relationship. Is being, respectful and organized, and and trying to have a smooth flow in your relationship. And money is just as much as we don't want it to be, money is a huge part of that.
Your bread and butter is fitness. And so I think one thing just to keep in mind too is, you can almost think of money as financial fitness in some ways.
Totally.
Mm-hmm. You're not going to just jump into a half marathon. There's definitely steps that you want to take along the way.
Training. Yeah.
So planning and organization, those are really going to be the foundations that you want to create so that you can take those little steps into your bigger goals.
Lastly, I know weddings can be super costly. Do you have any advice for the right way to chat about budgeting an upcoming wedding, or just in terms of saving for a wedding?
Being on the same page as far as what your expectations are for a wedding. Maybe one partner wants a smaller wedding, the other one wants a bigger one. So I think just having the initial conversations of, what is the expectation that we want for our wedding? What would be the price point that we would be ballparking? And then you can really kind of step back into how are we going to save to get there? Whether it's, saving a little bit on a monthly basis, or maybe setting a little bit aside per paycheck. So I think, again, it's taking it back to what's the big picture, and then really breaking it down into goal setting from there.
Well, this was really fabulous. Thank you so much. I feel like I learned so much, and now I'm even more inspired to get more financially organized. Where can we find out more about Personal Capital and the resources that you've recommended?
So you can find Personal Capital at personalcapital.com. Like I mentioned, you can sign up for a free dashboard. Our dashboard and our tools are free. And so I definitely encourage anyone listening to go ahead and do that. And that's just a great place to get initially organized with your money, and hopefully help make these conversations a lot easier with your partner.
Wonderful. I can't think of of a better thing to do right now, especially like in Creative Romance Month. So, all right, Krista, so great talking to you. And hopefully, we'll have many more healthy conversations about love and money.
Thanks for watching and weighing in on this topic in the comments below. For more healthy lifestyle tips, click on that next video and don't forget to subscribe.